Hello and welcome everyone to our last educational webinar on the 4 most promising and investment-ready industries of Ukraine. My name is Markevych and I'm the president of Crossways MK Consulting, an investment consulting company that attracts Canadian investments into Ukraine. To the right of me, you will have Deputy Minister of Agriculture, Olga Trofimtseva, and to the left we have Bohdan Leshchyshen, who's the director of our CUTIS. Today, we will focus on the agriculture industry, where we'll discuss the investment climate of the industry in Ukraine. Agriculture industry is known as a breadbasket of Europe due to having some of the richest agricultural land in the world. And we'll discuss what's needed to realize this sector boundless potential. After presentation, Mr. Leshchyshen will provide a brief overview of CUTIS initiatives, and then the Deputy Minister, Trofimtseva, will briefly outline key strategic initiatives of the government in the sector, and will be able to answer some of the questions thereafter. With regards to the questions, you have a chat on your right-hand side of the screen, so please, during the presentation, if you can enter them, put them in a queue so we have them ready to go. Thank you.
This is one of the 4 sectoral presentations covering the most attractive sectors of Ukraine's economy in terms of investment opportunities. In the next several minutes, I will present Ukraine's food and agriculture sector in brief. After that, I will be happy to offer you more detailed information on request and answer any questions. Agriculture is one of the leading sectors of the Ukrainian economy. In 2017, the sector's share amounted to 12% of the gross domestic product of the country. Its share, along with the food industry, exceeded 16% of Ukraine's GDP. Agriculture has shown an upward trend in terms of its contribution to the economy's GDP. In 2017, however, the sector's volume decreased due to a drop in the yield of major crops. The agricultural sector is gaining momentum as its contribution to economic growth becomes ever more vital. Ukraine has an area of over 600,000 square kilometers, over 70% of which is farmland. Cropland covers more than half of the country's total land area. As of 2017, half of the country's cropland was farmed by agricultural companies, while home farms accounted for 38%. The companies managing the largest land portfolios are presented on the slide in front of you. The largest land farming corporations are Land Farming and Kernel, accounting for some 1% of the country's total land area each. Two of the top 10 companies, Prosperis and Generation, have U.S. owners. In 2001, Ukraine passed a law prohibiting the sale of agricultural land, a ban that has been extended 9 times. Almost 5 million Ukrainians, most of whom are now past retirement age, collect an average of $51.5 per hectare, or the equivalent of that amount in grain, sugar or other commodities, by leasing out their land plots. About half of the land leases signed to date have a maturity of 8 to 10 years. Land lease rates differ by the region. The most fertile soils in Cherkasy region command an average lease rate of $111 per hectare, while land in the arid southern regions is available to lease for only $30 per hectare. In the mountainous Transcarpathia region, land is leased for an average of $27 per hectare. However, even the highest land lease rates in Ukraine are estimated to be significantly lower than almost anywhere else in Europe where a free land market has been functioning for a long time. The government has been under pressure from the International Monetary Fund and agricultural companies to lift the land sale ban, which poses a challenge because land farming companies currently lease land under short-term leases, which undermines their profitability. Ukraine's parliament has extended the moratorium through the 1st of January 2019, while some have argued for an extension until 2024. Without it, foreign companies from the European Union or the US would rush to buy up land in Ukraine, lawmakers say. In 2019, Ukraine will be holding both presidential and parliamentary elections, which may yield unexpected results and speed up land reform, leading to the eventual cancellation of the moratorium. In addition, this May, the European Court of Human Rights issued a press release stating that Ukraine's outright ban on buying and selling farmland constituted a violation of Article 1 of Protocol No. 1, Protection of Property, of the European Convention on Human Rights. Crop farming is Ukraine's #1 subsector within agriculture. The contribution of crop farming to total agricultural output has been keeping at a steady 70%. Grain, mainly corn, wheat and barley, accounts for a lion's share of Ukraine's crop farming output. Ukraine also produces over 20 million tons of potatoes and more than 10 million tons of sunflower seeds and sugar beet per year. Despite the slight decline in yields in 2017, following a bumper crop in 2016, last year all major crops showed increased yields compared to the relatively low figures of several years ago. For example, wheat yields increased to 4.1 tons per hectare, barley to 3.3 tons per hectare, and corn to 5.5 tons per hectare. Ukraine's agricultural sector is potentially capable of feeding up to 195 million people all over the globe. That is more than 4 times the population of Ukraine. As of the 1st of May 2017, Ukraine had 4 million head of cattle, including 2 million head of dairy cows. It also had a total herd of over 6 million pigs and over 1.6 million sheep and goats, as well as over 201 million poultry. While in absolute terms the country's total livestock has decreased, poultry resumed its growth in 2017. In 2017, the sale of livestock for slaughter in Ukraine reached 3.3 million tons in live weight. The country also produced 10.3 million tons of milk and 15.6 billion eggs. Products of animal origin produced by Ukraine are chiefly consumed domestically. Exports of animal products reached $1.1 billion in value including $531 million worth of meat products and $226 million worth of dairy products. Eggs are another key exportable product. In early 2018, Ukraine became the EU's top foreign egg supplier with a share of 38%. The export of honey has been significantly constrained by EU import quotas. Since Ukraine joined the WTO in 2008, it has enjoyed an overall growth trend in the volume of its agriculture and food exports. The maximum was reached during the 2012 to 2013 period, and then in 2017. Farming products and foodstuffs have become the backbone of the nation's exports. While 10 years ago, they accounted for a mere 15% of total exports, and now they've exceeded 40%. Ukraine is the world's #1 exporter of sunflower oil and 6th largest grain exporter, with up to 40 million tons exported during the 2017-2018 marketing year. At present, a significant share is exported of the total volume of production of such crops as wheat, 35%, corn, 54%, sunflower oil, 90%, soybean, 54%, and rapeseed, 99%. The European Union has been the top consumer of Ukrainian agricultural exports. In 2017, Ukraine achieved record-breaking volumes of agricultural exports into the EU, totaling a value of $5.8 billion. Total agricultural exports reached $17.7 billion, including grain, $6.5 billion, sunflower oil, $4.5 billion, sunflower seeds, $2 billion, other crop products, $0.8 billion, foodstuffs, $2.8 billion, and products of animal origin of $1.1 billion. Thus, crops account for some 78% of Ukraine's total agriculture and food exports. Ukraine's agricultural sector has a high potential on international financial markets. A majority of Ukrainian IPOs have come from this particular sector. Due to the poor financial infrastructure in Ukraine, most of those IPOs have had to be floated on foreign exchanges, such as Warsaw, London, or Frankfurt. Last year, Kernel issued a Eurobond of $500 million, maturing in 2022 with a coupon of 8.75%. This issue ended the 3-year silence period for Ukrainian agri-companies on foreign markets. Following a period of depressed interest in Ukrainian assets on global markets during 2014 through 2016, after the Russian invasion, M&A activity started recovering in 2017. Foreign companies were both selling and buying Ukrainian assets. It is worth noting that Fairfax Financial Holding paid $100 million to buy a blocking stake in a starter holding, while the German Pfeiffer & Langen expanded its production capabilities by buying 6 Ukrainian sugar mills for about $50 million. At the same time, many Ukrainian agricultural corporations have continued to expand their land portfolios. The top 5 challenges facing Ukraine's agricultural sector include a high level of corruption in the country, the moratorium on the sale of agricultural land, insufficient transport infrastructure, a large share of the shadow economy, and high borrowing rates. Ukraine considers among its major competitive advantages its vast holdings of black earth, labor competitiveness, production of organic products, low land lease rates, and the EU-Ukraine deep and comprehensive free trade area. Ukraine has got all it takes to be one of the world's leading producers and exporters of agricultural products. Ukraine is richly endowed with natural resources, climate, soils, and long-standing farming traditions, providing a solid foundation for global excellence in agriculture. Ukraine has numerous competitive advantages and a strong export potential in some of the world's most highly demanded agricultural products.
Yes, Mr. Bohdan, we have technical difficulties. Sorry, guys. If you can please give us a brief overview of the CUTIS project.
The Canadian government has funded the CUTIS project, which stands for the Canadian-Ukraine Trade and Investment Support Project, with a $14 million 5-year project grant, which started in 2016. The project is assisting Ukrainian companies in developing bilateral trade opportunities in some chosen sectors through trade shows and B2B meetings with Canadian buyers and distributors. In addition, the CUTIS project is working with Ukrainian companies looking for strategic investment partners in Canada. To date, the CUTIS project has introduced Ukrainian confectionery and furniture companies through a trade show format to Canadian distributors and buyers in Montreal and Toronto. In August 2018, the Ukrainian shoe and textile apparel manufacturers will be coming to Toronto to showcase their products at trade shows, while IT companies will be coming to Canada in 2019. On the investment side, the CUTIS project is focusing on the following sectors: agriculture, infrastructure and logistics, energy generation and supply, IT and telecom. The CUTIS project will be inviting Ukrainian companies to Toronto to meet Canadian investors in late October 2018. I believe that the recent signing of the free trade agreement between Canada and Ukraine should help in making Canadian companies more comfortable to invest in Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Leshchyshen. Madam Deputy Minister, if you can please give us a brief, overview of the government initiatives.
Thank you very much indeed for this opportunity to have such a direct dialogue, I would say. Well, as you've seen already from the presentation and from a video, Ukrainian agricultural sector at the moment is growing quite rapidly, I would say, and it's really among the top sectors of the Ukrainian economy at the moment, considering the GDP share and considering our share in the total exports of Ukraine. As for the governmental priorities and ministry's priorities, what we are working on at the moment, land reform was already mentioned as a representation, and I would like to say that it's really one of the top priorities at the moment. It's still the top priority, even though you may be not hearing much now about it, but the reason behind this is very simple. The agricultural land reform is a quite sensitive political and social issue in Ukraine, and that's why I will be honest with you, we do see that with the current parliament till the new election, we will not see a lot of political movements as for the land reform. So we concentrated at the ministerial level, at the governmental level on the technical issues. We are trying to fill the geocadastre. So we are trying to bring in order the situation, this registration of the property rights for land plots. And also we are now working on financial instruments for the small producers, for micro producers, to make them also the full, let's say, members or full participants of this process of the civilized agricultural land market, if it will be started, or when it will be started after the parliamentary election in 2019. So as for the timeline, and I suggest that you would like to hear some, let's say, a forecast for a timeline for the land reform. I suppose that really after a parliamentary election, we will see more political activity in this direction. First of all, I'm talking here about their adoption, about the voting of the agricultural land circulation. We have this draft law in the parliament at the moment, and I really hope that it will be voted when, and then all the technical issues should be solved. And I think that the active process of the opening of a land market in Ukraine, with all the constraints, with all the legislative frameworks, etc., and regulations, will be in 2019-2020. As for their other priorities of the work in the ministry, this is the definitely EU integration. Or I would rather say that we are working on the approximation of Ukrainian legislation in such fields like sanitary, phytosanitary, veterinary, food safety, and quality of the food fields to the European Union requirements and to European Union regulations. But it doesn't mean that we adopt to 100% all the European Union regulations. So I would like to understand you that. But nevertheless, this process of Euro integration helps us. It helps us to make Ukrainian producers and exporters, after they're focusing heavily till 2014 on the Russian market, to make them real global players, because through their functioning effective state system of the monitoring of the control of the management in mentioned fields from phytosanitary to food safety, we are making them, more, let's say, room for their products on their different world markets. So euro integration, this is the second important issue. We are also in Ukraine now working on such topics like climate smart agriculture, including such important topics like irrigation and melioration, because we're also aware in Ukraine as a large-scale agricultural producer and exporter already worldwide, we are definitely concerned about the soil quality. We are definitely concerned about the changing of the climate and weather conditions in Ukraine. And we already, for instance, can observe in some of the southern regions of Ukraine, every 8 years out of 10 are too dry for agricultural production without an irrigation. So the development and reconstruction of already existing still since Soviet times irrigation systems, it's among our priorities as well. Organic agriculture. At the moment, organic agricultural production in Ukraine is also growing very fast. During the last 10 years, the number of agricultural producers in Ukraine grew 10 times, actually. And we are now exporting more than 85% of Ukrainian agricultural organic products to the European Union. But we are exporting them also to such markets like United States, like Canada, like Japan, etc. And organic agriculture is a very attractive niche, taking into account, again, the issues of sustainability, of the environmentally friendly production, etc., and also definitely the effectiveness and the profitability of this niche. We are also still working on such complicated or complex issue, I would say, like a privatization of state-owned enterprises in the agricultural sector. We do have some large enterprises like Spirit, for instance, or some others, but we have also something like 300 or even more smaller state-owned enterprises in different regions of Ukraine, and most of them actually should be privatized because state and the ministry is not a real effective manager for all these 300 enterprises. And in the privatization of such kind of the companies, state-owned companies, we do see the also potential for the foreign investors to come and to participate in this kind of privatization. This is in short the priorities on which we are working at the moment in Ukraine. Definitely there are some other more specific, smaller, let's say, fields or more focused directions. But I also would like to mention here separately the field or direction of the AgTech, agricultural technologies and innovations, because on this intersection between the IT sector, which is also very strong in Ukraine, and agricultural sector, we also do see at the moment very strong developments and a lot of interesting initiatives, startups, but also commercial initiatives and commercial enterprises which are involved in AgTech business and different kind of agricultural technology projects. These large agri-holdings, which were mentioned, for instance, in the presentation about the agricultural sector of Ukraine. I'll stop here.
Super, quite extensive. So now we'll, thank you very much. So now we'll turn to some Q&A. Let me see, we covered quite a lot. So I think, so what is the current legislative scenario surrounding the gross sale and export of marijuana? So this year we officially, it became legal in Canada. So I guess Canadians want to know, Canadian investors want to know, is there legal medical marijuana industry or recreational industry, or what's the possibility of, I guess, investments in the, in growing the product in Ukraine and the export potential of the product, I guess.
My answer will be short and clear. No, for today, we don't have a legal market for medical marijuana. We have the very well developed market for the technical bust cultures, so-called, yeah, so crops like loan. Who knows how it in English? I flex solid, yeah, like exactly. But it's rather for technical issues, etc. And hemp as well. Also for technical issue, for technical purposes. As for the medical marijuana production, this issue somehow wasn't even raised yet in Ukraine. So no.
Thanks. I'll ask another one. As far as the investment, I guess government support of the investment climate, or what's been done on that front.
This is also sort of a complex task, not for only for the Minister of Agricultural Policy and Food, because when we're talking about the attraction of the investors, foreign investors into the agricultural sector of Ukraine, they should be aware that we are mostly talking about such issues like financial, like tax issues, etc., etc. Also custom issues, if we're talking about the import, for instance, of the equipment or egg machinery or whatever, or let's say also import of some technologies or innovational know-hows and know-hows and IT IT programs or something like that. From the ministry's side, we are working very closely together with both National Investment Council of Ms. Kovalev and this investment promotion office of Mr. Daniel Bilek. And we are trying in this close dialogue to find their, let's say, the specific issues which are most important for the foreign investors. Because in general, I must say you directly that agricultural sector is now definitely among the most attractive for the investments, both in domestic investments and foreign investments in different fields. We see it actually every day in the ministry. We see it from the requests of the foreign companies, starting with Chinese companies, ending up with Saudi Arabian or European companies who would like to invest in different subsectors of Ukrainian agriculture. Again, starting up with crop production and ending up with some processing initiatives or animal breeding, cattle breeding or animal production, etc. And we are trying to support them this information. We are trying to support them this information on a legal framework, because the main questions which we are getting in the ministry from such foreign investors normally, what are the main legal framework issues which we should take into account, starting with ownership of the land or lease land rights, etc. What are the peculiarities of working in different regions of Ukraine? For instance, if you would like to be involved in the crop production, in grain production, which region we should consider rather so as a first, etc. And we are also asking definitely about the state or governmental programs, different kind of programs, including their state support programs for agricultural producers, because sometimes these programs are also helpful for them. So, and you know that as for the general situation with investment climate in Ukraine, when you're talking to the foreign companies and farmers, by the way, we have a lot of foreign farmers who are working already in Ukrainian agriculture, starting with French farmers, German, Dutch, etc. We're all here. You're hearing that their impression or their position, what we have at the moment, that there is much less corruption already at the central governmental level, also in the regions. There's still some problems in such areas like custom areas, like for instance, also land administration, for instance. But and we see it, by the way, also from the placement of Ukraine in these ratings. They're doing business actually. Yeah? So when you're talking to both to large companies and smaller producers, all of them are saying, okay, we are now absolutely satisfied, for instance, with the VAT refund. Yeah, so that was a large tax issue just a couple of years ago, and now it's working almost perfectly, automatically, and everything is fine there. The same situation, as I said, at the regional level with many other aspects. So I think that the positive progress is very visible, not only for us, I mean, it's at first place for businesses who are working here, and both for Ukrainian and international businesses.
Thank you. Some technical law number 6049D. A few days ago, government announced ease of exchange of agricultural land between different owners. What does that mean for future business?
Yeah, that's one of the important draft laws, which was voted just a day before yesterday during our so-called agricultural day in Ukrainian parliament. By the way, it was very fruitful. We voted, or the parliament voted actually, 6, if I'm not mistaken, out of 9 laws which were brought up. Among them, this draft law on so-called consolidation of the agricultural land parcels. It's important because it will simplify, first aspect, it will simplify the management of the larger scale agricultural enterprises and consolidation of the land for them, because I don't want to take a lot of time and explain what is already maybe well known, how it works in Ukraine. I mean, we have a lot of owners of smaller parcels. We are given these small plots, land plots in their lease for the larger producers, farmers, or larger agro holdings, etc. So this law brings more order exactly in this property and lease relationships between the land plots owners and the companies who are leasing them. This is one aspect, and second aspect, it brings more security for agricultural producers because we also have one of the let's say challenging issues at the moment in agricultural production, in agricultural sector in general. This is the so-called radar attacks. You're hearing also about that. Then there are, I would say, not very or half criminalized structures trying to get the ownership over there some parts of the land plots of the agricultural producers. So this draft law will help to avoid such kind of situations through the legal mechanisms.
Thank you very much. And the last question we'll take today is you made a couple comments on the IT in the agriculture sector. So can you please comment on what other initiatives are in the works to improve the issues of financing for the agriculture structure, improve production, etc.?
One of the most important things is for financial support. This is the access to financial resources, different kind of financial resources, including credit resources for the smaller producers. Because if we are talking about the AgTech also, by the way, larger companies, agro holdings again, or even mid-sized companies, we normally have a good access to the financial resources, including credit resources in the banks. And you hearing that if you are talking both to the producers and to the banks, because banks are saying that agricultural producers normally are now among the most active and most attractive clients for them. But for smaller producers, yes, that's really the problem. And that's why, for instance, among the state support programs in our ministry, we have one of the, by the way, most popular program. This is a partial compensation of the bank interest rates for credits. That means that for small producers which are having less than 500 hectares of land, for instance, and normally with them banks are not willing to work so much. We are providing for them. We are giving for such kind of producers much higher interest rates for their credits. We are providing for them now, not only for them, but for different categories of agricultural producers, such as state support program, where we're compensating from the state, from the government, from the central bank, this interest rate. Another also important program which is related, actually, maybe not directly yet, to the issue of AgTech, agricultural innovations and technologies. This is a partial compensation of the ag machinery built in Ukrainian ag machinery. Then the farmers are buying Ukrainian, let's say, tractors or some other kind of the ag machinery equipment. We are getting from a state from 25 up to 40% compensated costs for this ag machinery. And one of the critic points for this program at the beginning of this year was, for instance, why we are compensating the costs of the tractors, but not the costs of producing Ukraine drones, let's say. And now we are considering how we can maybe next year include some of the innovation ag machinery produced in Ukraine in such kind of state support programs.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Deputy Minister, for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leshchyshen. Thanks everybody for listening in and watching. We will get back to you with post webinar. We'll be talking to you, emails, reaching out to you, phone calls, and thanks again. Goodbye.